IBM. And our goal is to get you really excited about what digital could mean for the brokerage insurance business, to really allay any fears you might have about it. It's not too late to get started, and it's certainly not too early to get started on incorporating digital into your business. What I wanted to just quickly start off with is a question. How many people here have been to Venice? Plan to go to Venice? Keep your hands up. Have thought about going to Venice before it sinks? Because there's an amazing number of things that have been going on in Venice. I mean, one thing you may know is that in 1968 there was a catastrophic flood there. And the sea completely covered all of Venice. In the 40 years between the 1930s and the 1970s, Venice sank 12 centimeters. So since then, because of science and technology and things they're doing, it's only sunk about less than a centimeter. But they're working very hard in order to really save Venice. A couple of examples to address this problem that they've got in terms of the age of the city and some of the challenges that they have include the use of data and analytics. So they're doing predictive modeling in order to predict whether or not they get another catastrophic sea flood, for example. They've built something called the Muse, which is in a complete wall that will come up once they see that something might be coming weather-wise to prevent the city from being flooded out. There's a huge amount of data and digital technology that are involved in this initiative. Another example of something that I think is really cool is they've built there's 60,000 residents in Venice, and that is tiny compared to the 2 million tourists that stop in Venice every year, causing huge wear and tear. But what they did is they built an app that you can download onto your mobile that describes 900 different artifacts and treasures. And it's got GPS, location, positioning in it so that you can find those artifacts. And something very cool they've done is they have started crowdsourcing. So that when you go and actually look at a particular item and read about it and you found it through this app on your mobile phone, they tell you how much money, and it could be a small amount of money, $150, that they need in order to actually do some preservation work on that particular item in order to save Venice and keep Venice available for years to come. And you can actually just make a donation if you like that item right then and there. So some pretty creative ideas that they're using this new technology that we've got available to us. So we are going to get into insurance. Let me just quickly introduce the panel, and then I have a couple of setup slides to give you context around our discussion, the questions that we've prepared. But of course, we want some engagement with you folks. So after I do the first few questions, we'll get started. So first of all, as you know, this is Brian Bartosh. What he told me about digital for him is that they're using data in order to have intelligence about the customer and understand the customer and anticipate what the customer might need so that they can increase their close ratio. So there's a pretty interesting example of the use of digital. To Brian's left is Ed Meiering. Ed is our carrier representative from Aviva, and what Ed told me about their use of digital, one example, is that he wants to be where the customers are, because the customers are using digital, and so that's a key focus of his. To Ed's left is Debbie Olsen. Debbie's with ingenie, and Debbie and her organization are offering products and services to the insurance industry that are completely based on digital. To Debbie's left is John Belyea. John is with McLean. He is our Canadian broker representative on the panel today, and he is absolutely passionate about digital. He's doing some incredibly creative things in the ecosystem and working with other organizations that he'll share a few points about as we go through this panel discussion. And to John's left is John Foreman. Oh, we got two Johns on the left, so it'll get really confusing. John is a principal with an e-commerce consulting organization called ePath. He's also a teacher at University of Toronto, and he's our industry representative who is working completely within the digital realm. So with that, I'm just going to give you a bit of context here. There were 3 places that we thought we could talk about digital. One in the operational side of things, another might be in risk, but we chose customer experience. How can we start to explore how digital can be used to improve the customer experience? So from an IBM perspective, we have 3 shifts that we see happening, and they center around data, cloud, and systems of engagement. So on the data side, this is just all about how data is growing like crazy and can give you a competitive advantage, kind of a little bit along the lines of what Brian talked about in his use of data to understand the customer ahead of time, anticipate their needs. Cloud is about setting up completely new business models because you don't have to worry about the technology infrastructure. You can rely on someone else to take care of that side of things. And that allows you to focus on systems of engagement. So what is that? That's mobile and social, for the most part. Use of mobile and social. So when we talk in the context of, or when we use that terminology, that's what I'm thinking about. Similar to the Venice example. So we have a problem, and that is that individuals are really expecting to get the best experience, similar to the last greatest experience they had. And how do we make sure that we enable that with our insurance brokerage proposition? I mean, you know, stepping back in terms of competition and these other new entrants into the market, that's a challenge for us. And as Wendy highlighted, you know, we have a compelling reason to act really when we know that customers aren't necessarily trusting the industry yet and feeling like they're getting the service that they want. So this is a pretty busy chart, but I want to summarize really on the left-hand side of that. It gives you the forces that are the digital related forces from mobile, social, analytics and cloud, or data and analytics and cloud. And my Venice example pops up all throughout that. But really what's important is one organization, IDC, an analyst, has taken a look at what's happening, and it's happening quickly, and said that 98% of all spending over the next couple of years is actually, in the IT area, are actually going to be on these types of technologies, on this digital type of landscape. And in addition, Gartner, another technology analyst, has said that even focusing on one of these things, and as we learned in our workshop a few weeks ago with some of the members of ORBiT, snacks is better than meals because you can get something done. Gartner says just one of these things can make a huge difference, but it's combining them together that is actually incredibly powerful. So I hope that just kind of, we're going to think customer experience, we're going to be thinking about digital in terms of some of these capabilities move just beyond necessarily just the web, although the web is obviously an important aspect of this. And I'll kick off with a couple of questions. I'm first going to ask a question of everybody on the panel, and that question is for each person to describe what does digital mean for your organization so that we can have that context from each of them. Let's start with Brian. You are the only Brian.
They didn't give me my own microphone. What does digital mean? Well, I would say that the way I started out my presentation this morning is about the experience. The experience is really important, and that's what we're focusing in on, whether it be from the sales experience or the servicing experience. We think they're both important. A lot of times the consumer is looking for us to be the greatest in their expectations, and a lot of times we don't ask them or even help set those expectations. And so we want to understand those expectations and be able to deliver on that experience for them in a digital way. Partly because the newer, younger generations that are coming in have been brought up in that area, and so they expect, you know, to have the ability to text and and chat, carry on multitasking events. But it doesn't take away from what they truly want from an experience either.
Terrific, thanks. Ed, how about you? How is your organization thinking about digital?
Well, digital is one of our 3 strategic priorities. So any business idea that we have today, digital first is one of the ones that we try to then implement on. But digital can be a really, really broad topic, and so like an incredibly broad topic. So I want to break it down to perhaps a more simple thing from a sales perspective, so at a customer experience perspective. I'm really interested, and Aviva's really interested in trying to help brokers understand what exactly is your marketing plan. How are you going to attract new customers? And what are the digital components of that? And how will that work right through from attracting and then having them engage with you to actually fulfilling? Now that doesn't need to be a digital experience all the way through. We call any digital sale anything that starts there where they search, and perhaps that then is then fulfilled with bricks and mortar. But what are the parts? So an example I always like to give is, in the past, maybe you did a billboard, and that billboard would be passed by 20,000 people in a certain amount of time. Well, today a billboard in the digital space can be a banner ad or something, or a Google pay-per-click, something like that. You have to get who you are and what you do in front of the customer at the right time. The great thing about digital experiences, though, is that it can be measured. So you can figure out exactly how many people have gone by there, how has it worked, what kind of you can do a tremendous amount of analytics to figure out what works and what doesn't work. Whereas the billboard was kind of anecdotal at best. So I like to see, it doesn't need to be everything, but where are you experimenting? Because that's where customers are.
Hi. That worked. So I guess from Jeannie's perspective, we are digital. That's who we are, what we are. We're an internet brokerage. We're a digital brand. We target 16 to 24-year-olds. Anybody who has a 16 to 24-year-old knows that it's not just an expectation, it's an absolute requirement that you deliver over digital media, or else you really aren't serving that particular target. So that's who we are.
I agree with Ed that digital can mean so many different things to so many different people. 18 years ago, that was a pretty simple answer. Today, it's a little more complex. If I try to distill it down, certainly for our operation, it's about information, it's about data, and it's how we get that information, in particular, into the hands of our clients. I don't just think of it as a client, but if you think about I call it the circle of life. The time they start the research, the time they buy a policy, that policy is serviced, and then through renewal. And how are we getting information into the hands of our clients to make, or our prospects, to make that educated decision, to do the research? As Brian talked about earlier in his presentation, in terms of the amount of research that's being done online. It doesn't mean they have to buy it online, but that's where they start. If you're not there, they're not going to find you, you're not going to make a sale, whether it's over the internet or whether it's through a traditional method, either face-to-face or over the phone. So for us, it's how we connect all those dots. It's that experience that Brian talked about in terms of attracting and then retaining a client and really giving them that information and that connection the way they want it, which is how they want it, where they want it, and when they want it. And that's what it means to us.
I'd like to talk about it just from a multi-industries perspective, not limited to insurance. And the technology that's out there has enabled and conditioned consumers of all sorts to want an anywhere, anytime, personalized customer experience. That they bring that to their dealings with the insurance industry as well. But technology also has a couple of other impacts, and certainly in terms of creating the front office and the back office and the web presence and all the different tools, all the different channels that are required to engage with customers means that we have to live in that technology world as well. So all in all, I'd say the word omni-channel is what we hear is describing what's happening now. And it's, as was mentioned, combines both the digital but the real world as well into a blended experience.
Terrific. So the next question really started with in the context of customer experience. experience, what's the priority of digital in your organization? And I think we may as well just assume it's high right across the board. And what goals they have to incorporate, use, leverage digital. So let me start with Brian, thinking about the goals and I guess setting goals and strategy that leverage digital. And you've talked, extensively about your sales process, so we've seen some of that. So maybe what are some of the key messages that you would reinforce?
Well, I think as we all have said, digital is a lot of different things, and sometimes digital isn't something that the consumer is necessarily going to be exposed to, but they need to, the brokerage or the agencies need to be able to have and take advantage of digital to respond to them for the experience. Our slogan in our office is the point of contact, that we want to get everything handled within the point of contact with the consumer, the client. And so whether that be a billing question or a claim question, or even in the process of the sales process, we're looking at handling that point of contact, which means that our staff people need to have the data, information at their fingertips. And it comes to us in a lot of different ways, and that's what's, I think, special about our industry, is to understand, depending on what the question is, determines what type of information we can use. For instance, we do not always need to have a real-time policy inquiry to answer a question, for instance, like what your deductible is, or what kind of liability limits do you have, or is this vehicle on my policy? And a lot of that came to us just from leveraging download. We were able to get up-to-date information, and we look, and it's current, and we can do a quick view of finding that information for our client and answer that question right away. Billing information, where it's billed directly by the company, and it's important that we have that digital setup to pull that information in real time. It's surprising to me the numbers and percentages that I see, just because how are those questions being answered by the rest of you, those of you that are not using those types of technologies. And a lot of times it's scary to think that it's a callback, because we know that doubles the cost. So from a digital standpoint, it's not always what we're presenting or our client gets to see, but it's what we use to answer those questions at our point of contact.
So you raise a bit of an interesting point. I'm wondering, by a show of hands, how many people are using digital extensively in front of the customer and to enhance the customer's experience? Not everybody wants to put their hand up. So keep your hands up if you are using digital and working on enhancing the customer experience through digital in some form. And now, are you doing it as well as you would like to be doing it? Or do you feel like there's other opportunities and things that are challenging you? Okay. So we're going to look to the panel to be helping solve some of these challenges that, so be thinking about the questions that you've got in order to, figure out how to solve some of the challenges that you have. So let me just ask John Belyea, in thinking about goals around the customer experience and your use of digital and what you are doing, you had mentioned to me when we talked ahead of the panel about empowering the consumer. So I'm wondering if you can elaborate on what you mean by empowering the consumer and how this comes to play in your organization.
As I said earlier, describing what digital means to us, it's really giving them that information so they can do the research. That's what people are doing now. They're starting on their own. They're not relying necessarily on us. They're starting somewhere. So it's not only giving them that information, but then giving them access to tools. So it's that customer experience that either is part of the sales or the service process. So if they want to buy it online, we give them that opportunity. If they want to go halfway and they make a call, that we can do that as well. So it's really responding to how they wish to finalize that transaction. I can give you a couple examples. And where it really becomes powerful is on simple insurance products, and they do exist. We have a track day product, so if you want to bring your car for a track day event, so these are lapping events, I think is another way of describing them. That coverage is often, it's not under our policy. So we've created a policy which we will sell online. So you will find us all the information about what's covered and what's not covered there. You can get a quote, you can bind it, you can pay it, and the policy is issued for you. You do not have to call us. That coverage will be put in place right on the spot. And why that's important to us is that it is an easy product to sell. It's not very complex. And the average premium is $500 or $600. It's a one-time sale. we can't handle it a traditional way. We won't make money on it. So digital means is allowing us to sell, but also allows the clients to do it when they want, where they want it. And that's really important. Another initiative we've been involved with, some of you may have heard of Bullfrog Insurance, which just came live 6 weeks ago. That was a collaborative effort with 6 other brokers across the country. We created essentially an online commercial brokerage. And the idea was to meet a need that we knew was there, and that's individuals who, particularly during regular business hours, want to find information about commercial insurance for small businesses and ultimately want to buy it. So we created that digital experience. They can go online, they get the information, they get a quote, up to 4 companies, and if they want, they can finish that transaction there, which is to pay for it, the policy is issued immediately. We don't have to talk to them. We are selling a lot of sales offline because some wish to complete it offline, but if they wish to have that online experience, it is there. And even on this after sales, on the service side, the things that we want to do is, for instance, certificate issuance. It's something that we all grapple with. It's very expensive to issue certificates, and there are tools out there, and we've embraced that and we're rolling it more out to our clients where it makes sense. And one client alone this year has already issued, since January 1st, 194 certificates online themselves. They love doing that. They feel empowered. And it's great for us too, because that's 194 certs the team has not had to issue and not generated as money. So it's really, really worked well. And in the next couple of weeks, we're rolling out a mobile and desktop app that will put in the hands of our clients in personal insurance essentially immediate access to their policy information. They can get the PDF policy if they want, they can see when the next payment's coming out, and they can even have an electronic version of their pay slip. Well, not totally legal yet, it's still there and likely will be accepted by the police. So we're trying to do as much to enhance that experience for the client. And where it benefits us is that it allows us to spend our time properly upselling, cross-selling, and doing high value out with our clients and letting our clients do an element of self-service because they want to. And frankly, it's better for both of us if it's done that way.
John, what was that first coverage that you allowed them to purchase online?
It's called track dates. So
the question was, what was the first coverage that you allowed them to purchase online?
It's called track dates. So if you're insured, for instance, with Chubb and you have a Porsche 911, you want to go on a Porsche America, Club of America event in Mosport, you would sign an endorsement and do not have physical damage coverage when you're on that track for your vehicle. So check your own list. So we've created a product that will bridge that. It's a property product that will provide coverage for that vehicle when it's on the track. But more importantly, it's how we can sell that and distribute that to clients.
Your mobile app, is that through another company that you created it yourself, or?
And so the question's just about the mobile app and whether they created it, or?
I wish we could say it was our own. We licensed it from Sharp. I think some of you have seen the demonstration from Sharp. We're early adopters, and we see it being a very, very powerful tool for us. And I know Sharif and Sharp quite well, and they've been able to document that it's reduced calls by almost a third over payment inquiries, copies of policy, what's this? And that, again, benefits the clients and benefits us as an entity as well.
Bullfrog Insurance, great website. Is the goal to limit the amount of questions for the customer experience? I think right now it's about 40 questions. Is the goal to get it down maybe to less than 10?
Well, when you put 4 insurers around one boardroom table to create a unified application, you can understand why we ended up at 40. So the goal when one insurer is instead, they can actually do it at 12. So the goal is to get it down to literally a dozen questions. And if we can do that, that'd be fabulous. I've spoken to an operation in the States. They can do it with 3 questions.
Did everybody hear the question? I just need to know, did you hear what the question was, even at the back of the room? No. No? Okay. So the question was about the Bullfrog website, and there's 40 plus questions on there now. And the question was, are you planning on trying to reduce it? So John's answer in the context of that was, because of the number of players involved, they're, working through that, but going to get to fewer questions.
I just want to add in about the experience, because we're seeing this happen, this trend through the States right now, where it's all about reducing the number of questions. So the more information that can be drawn and work with a carrier. Now, it is harder when you have more than one carrier working on that process, but that's the concern we have when you look at the top 5 being more direct companies. Are they going to be able to eliminate the questions on their own, and we're going to get bogged down in our bureaucracy of information that we're not pulling out live, from other data sites that might be available. So I guess that trend, like you said, they're working on reducing it down. It is hard when you bring so many people to the table, though.
Okay, so let's move on to the next question around just challenges and obstacles that our panel is facing related to taking advantage of digital. So let's start with Ed. Ed, when we talked, we were just talking about culture and measurements and those kinds of things, and maybe you want to elaborate on that in other areas.
No, by all means. So with respect to our biggest challenges to getting, let's just talk about one aspect of digital because there's so much of it, but let's say with respect to attracting customers where they do their research and then fulfilling a sale, let's just call it anywhere along that step, or along that horizon, I guess. That's where the biggest challenge lies for us, because we don't see a lot of broker investment in that. There is a lot of investment by a few, but it's typically, like, so for example, one of the things that actually breaks my heart is when I see a broker redesign their website. And they redesign their website and they think, right on, it's done now, I've spent 10, 20, 30, 50 grand, whatever. And they put it out there without really, and they do it with a web company, and they develop something that looks fantastic. But we can tell, then we of course see it later on because they brag to us how awesome their website is, and we look at it and say, wow, what's their intent here? Like, have they thought about what exactly they want someone to do when they click on that? Have they thought about how that blends with the customer experience for all of the other ways they can fulfill? So it just breaks my heart. But so for example, just simple design principles sometimes we see missed. We see sometimes people's address and postal code on the front of their webpage. And I always wonder, do you think someone's going to go to your webpage because they want to look up your address to send you a letter? I know that's a really silly thing, and I'm probably picking on something that isn't maybe a sensitive area, but the point is it needs to be blazingly obvious what you want them to do, and also what your brand is, and it's not your logo. So what do you stand for? How are you trying to differentiate? How are they going to remember you? And so we actually developed something called a digital consultancy in our company, because we worked really, really well with some really interesting brokerages that we did some really interesting work with, and from a marketing and acquisition kind of space. And we saw the need to expand that to other brokerages. So we basically, I took 3 people on my team and I dedicated them 50% to working only in that digital space with the digital team, from a marketing perspective, customer acquisition perspective. And it was fantastic. We learned a lot, and now we're busy meeting with brokers one-on-one and saying, okay, now if you're thinking about redesigning your website, please talk to us, because we'd love to share with you and point to the right consultants that can help you really do this in a more significant and proper way. And it's not about us necessarily, there's some of us saying, well, we suggest this or we suggest this. Little things like make sure the #1 thing you want them to do is the most obvious thing on your webpage. Get a quote. Like what should be the button that is the most prevalent. If you just paid let's say you did Google pay-per-click. So you paid for someone to click when they shopped and they said, yes, I'm shopping for insurance. Now they come to your site. How to fulfill that should be #1. So anyways, we're having a lot of success with this consultancy. So even just as simple as thing as if you've got the proofs of your website, and you're going to be redoing it, and you're at the stage where you've got the layout kind of done, we have a turnaround time of about 2 hours, but if you send it to us, we'll critique it and say, here are some suggestions to help you improve this, to make the fulfillment work a little bit better. And if you really want to take this further, here are 3 agencies that we've vetted. Like we work with, I don't know, with 20 agencies now. But we've got a whole bunch of agencies that we've worked with that we can then suggest to you to say, here's 3 that you might want to choose from. They've helped brokers in the exact situation that you're in, at the exact stage that you're at. So then you don't have to go into this world of, how do I get there? Like, I know I have a problem, but who do I even talk to? Because that's intimidating. You have to basically say to yourself, I know that it's not necessarily working, but there's a lot of people out there that might help me design the exact wrong web page, and they still take my money, and they have a very convincing sales pitch. So it's that's a space right there where the digital consultancy is having massive, and website is only one aspect of probably a dozen in terms of an acquisition journey we're focusing on.
So a common thread throughout the conversation is, really because this is so big, you need to set a goal, you need to be solving a problem that you think this type of, a digital solution can solve, just as Ed's pointing out on the marketing front. From an obstacle point of view, I'm going to assume, since Debbie's starting something very new, that she might have run into a few challenges related to digital that she would share as, keeping you awake at night.
Well, so we started, we initially launched as a digital brand internet brokerage. So we weren't going from bricks and mortar out into the digital media. We started designing there, so that gave us a bit of an advantage because we could, start there and not have to grandfather in all of the existing processes. But at the same time, probably the major obstacle is, to Ed's point, good technology advice, resources, IT, the systems that we built are not encompassed solely by insurer systems and a BMS. That would not have done the complete job for us. We needed to add some additional systems to that. Still, your BMS is the hub of that, but you have certain types of information that don't necessarily all converge and come together. So if you're going to have an understanding of all of the social media, then you need to be on the social media, converse on the social media, interact on the social media, respond on the social media to actual insurance questions, complaints, problems, and so on. It is a vast world. Dealing with what comes into your telephone is typically a smaller portion of what may come into you from the digital world. So having an understanding of how you kind of funnel those pieces. The question also talked about duplication of effort. And the reality is one of our obstacles was you have what you can do on the internet, what you can reasonably do, and how you can tailor an experience inside a certain box. We had the opportunity to then say, what kicked out of the box? What kicked out of the box back into a traditional call center? So even though you kick it back to people and bricks and mortar, it still has to have that same brand, that same feel of being able to, even your people on the phone have to respond through email, through social media, all online, doing that kind of experience, or it doesn't make sense. And you'll disconnect and lose people. So we started with it's Ontario Auto, full quote, and bind, and buy, online, with no intervention of a person at all. It orders reports like MVRs and AutoPlus. It will, based on how the technology views that, kick you out that you need to speak to a person. So we had to focus on where advice made sense. In some cases, you can't really give good advice about a particular thing on the internet very well. Some things are great. There's a set of check marks, here's some information, Bob's your uncle, off you go. In other cases, it really is a back and forth negotiation and interview about what's going on. And so one of the goals for us, of course, always was to find out what was the size of the box we could start with. Go with what you got when you're in startup. What's the size of the box we could start with? And then how could we continue to add so the box got bigger? So less and less people got kicked out, less and less. And of course you look at your priorities and your numbers, and then you say, oh, this is causing us the most effort, and this is causing us the most amount of time to deal with. Let's see if we can put that back in the online box. And that's a very, very creative exercise where lots of good thoughts and lots of intelligent people have to get together. It probably doesn't hurt that ingenie is owned by a software vendor, which is an advantage that many brokerages don't have. because the software and the resourcing, the IT side of it, is really key to Ed's point. You can spend a lot of money on bad technology. It's very easy. It's surprisingly easy to do. And to understand how not to do that and what are the right fit for your particular goals and sets and type of insurance, and you know, brokers are all different. What's your piece of the pie, and what fits best for you that's out there that will work.
So it's interesting that there's an entire end-to-end process through digital to do this entire buying and binding and issuing of the you know, the complete transaction. So the next kind of thought is, okay, so how does the broker really differentiate itself if the world is going online? How do you provide value to the customers if, you know, it's going to turn into something that, you know, is centered on the technology? And I'll just ask if anybody on the panel wants to jump in and answer that question.
Perhaps I could just add a comment coming from other industries. We're asked all the time, how do we compete with Amazon? Right? As was mentioned earlier, I think Wendy mentioned in her opening remarks, the idea that when Amazon came around, they thought, well, we might as well shut up all the stores because nobody's ever going to buy anything in a store again. Mm-hmm. And that hasn't proven to be the case. In the US, only about 10% of business is done online, and in Canada it's even less. It's like 6 or 7%. So the reality is that the offline channel is going to be around for a long time. Really what we're talking about is how do we blend the online and the offline channel to get the best fit for what the customer is looking for. Right? So how do we differentiate from Amazon in general? Well, first, don't sell what Amazon is selling. Right? You've got to sell something that is in some way differentiated from that, because you really don't want to be competing with them on price. The second thing is, how can you differentiate on relationship and on service and on the other things that customers place value on? Because those are things that you know, Amazon is not in as good a position to deliver. So the experience is saying that while there is well, Amazon and others who do business online focusing on real-time and convenience and price, while they're going to capture a certain percentage of the market, they're not going to capture the whole market. Our job is to figure out how can we best serve the part of the market that's not going to go specifically for that value proposition.
So I've been given the 5-minute warning about a minute ago, so that means we have 4 minutes. So I just wanted to ask the audience if anybody has just their own question that they would like to ask one of the panel members at all.
So for the brokers that are moving in the digital direction, did you look at anything outside the insurance industry as kind of
business model,
a model, or that you see as leaders and it works in our model?
So this question.
Sorry, if you have, if you could say.
So the question is, to Brian and John, did you look at other examples of this digital business model to inform you in your own decisions?
The answer is yes and no, in the sense that the window for me and for the group I was with was being in the UK in 2007. We went over, we met with Lloyd's, we were with Aviva, RSA, and learning where the UK marketplace was then. Even in 2007, they were miles ahead of where we are today in Canada. But we knew it was coming. And maybe not the exact same way, but we saw it. We had a window on the future. And that's what got us thinking about how we could leverage technology and to bring it into our businesses, to not only for the customer experience, but in order to compete. I honestly believe we can compete with the large direct writers. We can offer an experience that they can. And it's not necessarily as expensive as everybody thinks it is. There's some remarkable things being done online outside of Canada, the US or the UK. I know one broker that just does professional liability policies, and they have 40,000 policies in force sold online with 6 employees. And it's that type of, that's where we're going, particularly for some of the specialized products. So it's how do we leverage that? And I believe it's going to require some collaboration. We can't do it on our own. That's when we create a bullfrog. That's a serious 6-figure spend, and that can be done by one broker. So how are we going to work together, either with some of our colleagues or as an industry, to sort of position ourselves?
think one thing you'll find out is that the days of generalization probably are out for brokers and agents because it is too costly. It's costly for carriers too. And so as you mentioned there with specialization, it seems like those that have been successful have specialized in either a market segment or a product, which has been helpful. Anyways, I'd like to continue the conversation just about what expectations are, because I really don't think the consumer had much choice but to go online and digital because of the fact that we took our phone systems and said, press 1 for service, press 2 if it's a car, press 3 if your car is blue, and so on. And we dragged that through to the point where I might as well just go online and do it. So I think in some respects, society itself, whether it be in the U.S. or Canada, have really built up this where people are expecting bad service because that's just the way it is. And so I think we have opportunity, because we can get outside the area.
I just wanted to add one thing to John's comment too, and exactly that, in that vein. Buying might be 6%, but research is 70 to 80. So when I say digital, I don't mean buying digital. I mean, how do you get discovered where the research is happening, and then how do they get to you, and then how does the sale happen? How much of that is through digital, such as a Bullfrog? And Bullfrog works great, and the reason it works great is it's going after very specific segments that can have a few questions. The professional liability is exactly the same. And I imagine for some of those professional liability opportunities, if you tacked on an office pack for a really understandable segment, that would probably be 3 questions too. So there are things that can be really simple, but what I'm getting at is research absolutely is done online. The trick is, how do you turn it from research into something that can become a brick and mortar experience? What does that transition customer experience look like?
And I'd like to just add a small comment as well around differentiating yourself. Think about the call centers. Think about when you get a phone call. It's really based on how you answer the phone, what questions you ask, how easy it is to do business with you. All of that differentiation that exists on the telephone also exists in digital media. How easy is it to go through your customer experience? How understandable are your questions? How good is the glossary that goes with your questions? Are you speaking in insurance brokerese when you try to speak to the general public? Or are you speaking in what brokers do so well, which is speak well and normally to people so they understand, and then turn around and speak to their partners in insurance brokerese language? So there's that capability to differentiate yourself online exists exactly the same way it does in bricks and mortar, in marketing, and in telephone sales. Who you are, back to, do you know who you are? Do you understand what it is you want to present? And then you work out how to do it.
So do we have time for another question? Sure, Rick. It's Rick? Jeff, sorry.
Do you feel that CRM is dead and the consumer has all the power now in social? And do you also feel the sales funnel has changed in terms of buying decisions? The sales funnel, you want to get people in the sales funnel, but the sales funnel is more circular right now. Do you feel that that's evolving, or no?
So Jeff, let me just repeat Jeff's question for everybody. He's wondering if CRM is dead, whether the consumer has all the power.
I'll just say one quick statement. I always look to my son, being a different generation, and I find that relationships are much stronger in his generation than they are in mine. Mm-hmm. And so I would say that they're born in a digital world where they expect from either gathering information and researching or connecting with, but they look for a whole different relationship than what I've seen in my own generation, where they go to him for expertise. His clientele that are his age are sitting there connecting with him for, you decide for me, you help me decide.
Okay, so we have a new leader here. I want to thank the audience for joining us with some questions, and the panel for doing a terrific job up here for you. I'll just close by giving you an example of Security First Insurance, which is a Florida-based insurance brokerage who decided to use tweeting and social media in order to connect with their clients. And it's a very, very simple solution. And I know from the ice storm in December 2013, I got connected to PowerStream. And I was very engaged with PowerStream during that emergency and finding out exactly where the power was out and when it was coming on, and following what everybody was saying and how we were helping one another. We're just strangers in the digital world. And Security First Insurance just decided we're just going to use that kind of digital capability to change how we connect with our clients. So a small snack that you could consider contemplating. So thank you.